Welcome back to the Roundup, where each week we go through the biggest pieces of news and the best fantasy advice from Fantasy Life to help you dominate your fantasy leagues every single week. We know week one was a little tough for most fantasy players, but let's go through the biggest news and notes you need to know going into week two. Unfortunately, injuries were the talk of the town in week one. Cooper Kupp was placed on IR. We had Diontae Johnson and Aaron Jones leave their respective games with hamstring injuries. It was a mess. But then there were some unsung heroes that maybe most of us didn't see coming, and the ones that made the waiver wire runs in week one absolute chaos. But can they be waiver wire heroes this week? Let's see. And of course, the star of the waiver wire this week was none other than Rams rookie wide receiver Puka Nakua, who you can see right here was a high waiver priority on the Fantasy Life waiver wire tool. Now, Puka Nakua had an incredible week one, right? He had 10 catches for 119 yards, and his targets were the most by a rookie wide receiver in week one ever of all time. That's a fun stat to know. Now, Puka Nakua is unfortunately dealing with an oblique injury, so that's something you're going to want to watch going into week two. But hopefully, Puka Nakua can do what he did in week one, again, for all of you that got him on the waiver wire. The other two that I want to talk about, Justice Hill over here and Gus Edwards. These are both Ravens running backs, and unfortunately, J.K. Dobbins did suffer a season-ending injury, which is the worst. But now you have both of these guys who profile right now as low-end RB3s, but someone could take over this backfield. We don't know which one yet. You can give your guesses, but whoever does is going to go into that RB2 range. So Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, and of course Puka Nakua were some of the favorites on the waiver wire going into week two. Now, we never want to overreact too much to week one, but sometimes there is just underlying data that needs to be highlighted. And this week, Dwayne has one running back that you need to buy low on before it's too late. Let's take a look.
Let's look at the closest comps for James Cook. We start in 2022 with Aaron Jones, who scored 14.9 points per game. He finished as the RB10. Also in 2022, we had Alvin Kamara at 14.6 points per game. He was the RB12. Then we have 2013 Reggie Bush. He scored 17.7 fantasy points per game, was the RB6. 2012, CJ Spiller scored 15 fantasy points per game. He was the RB9. And then finally, we have Matt Forte in 2011. He scored 18.7 points per game and was the running back 6. So doing the math on James Cook, it's pretty straightforward. Every player in the comp pool achieved more than what we saw from his 10 points in week one. In fact, the lowest player for the season was Kamara at 14.6 last year, and we also have the potential upside to get a top 6 season. Now, he could be an outlier. He may not achieve those goals, but we're just playing the probabilities, and it makes him a great buy low candidate.
I think we all held our breaths when Aaron Rodgers went down during his first game as a New York Jet, and then we all couldn't believe the news when it was reported that he did tear his Achilles and he would be out for the remainder of the 2023 season. Well, Aaron Rodgers posted to Instagram on Wednesday saying, "The night is darkest before the dawn. I shall rise yet again." So I don't think anyone should be counting Aaron Rodgers out going into the 2024 season. He did get a repair of that Achilles and it was a successful surgery, so don't count Aaron Rodgers out in 2024. We all know week one was brutal for the people that had zeros in their starting lineups. We're looking at you, Drake London, T. Higgins, and Dallas Goedert. But are there some quarterbacks that we should be concerned about going into week two? Is it time to panic? Let's find out. So, should we be panicking about any quarterbacks going into week two? Let's start with the highest paid player in NFL history, quarterback Joe Burrow. Now, I am on the Fantasy Life rankings page, fantasylife.com, on our Cisco WebEx board, which has been absolutely incredible. And we can look, and Joe Burrow in our rankings is QB6 going into week two. We understand he had a really bad game against the Browns. He only had 82 passing yards, but now he's going to go up against a Ravens team that could be a really good bounce back spot for him. So we're not panicking on Joe Burrow going into week two. One quarterback, though, that we are semi-panicking on, none other than Seahawks quarterback Geno Smith. Geno Smith only had 112 passing yards in week one, which was absolutely brutal to see. But now he gets to face the Detroit Lions going into week two. The over-under here is set at 47, and just to me, there is too much firepower on this offense to be completely bad, but they do have injuries to 2 starting tackles, so that could be a little bit tough for Geno Smith. We are only semi-panicking on Geno Smith. We're giving him about a 6 out of 10 rating, so hopefully Geno Smith can turn it around going into week 2. Now it's time for our best bets going into week 2. Talk about a bounce back. We're going to bounce back from last week. We bet on Geno Smith. We bet on Darren Waller. Wasn't great. So this is where we're going to get things right here. Now, if you go to fantasylife.com and check out our best bets page, almost the whole entire betting staff likes the Buffalo Bills minus 8.5 against the Raiders. Now, this might be an overreaction to the Raiders win in week 1 and just how bad the Buffalo Bills looked in week 1 as well. So we like the Buffalo Bills here at minus 8.5. And the next bet we like is the Bears +3 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I get it. Baker Mayfield, that Buccaneers team came out and did something that most didn't think they could do. Again, this feels like a bit of an overreaction. So we like the Bears +3.5 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 2. All right, that was the roundup for week 2. Appreciate so much you guys listening and watching. Make sure you go to fantasylife.com, subscribe to our newsletter that comes into your inbox 7 days a week. Good luck in week 2. Watch those injury reports and let's go get it.